Oregon's schedule is here. So what should our expectations be? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show. Thank you, everybody who supports it already. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, helping you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, early takeaways from the schedule. It's a pretty tough schedule overall with the way the rotations work for who we miss in conference play. And then our non-conference game is not a cupcake, but definitely a little bit easier than last year. Georgia and BYU, that was pretty darn tough. But for how tough the quality of opponents are, I need to up the brightness on my face a little bit. For how tough the games are, I think it's about as favorable as it could have been, which might be a little wink and nod from the Pac-12 offices of like, hey, thanks for sticking around. We would love it if you continued to stick around. And here's just a little present there. I don't think it's that easy, but there are a couple notable breaks in here. So the teams that we're going to miss in conference play are Arizona and UCLA. And that's, about a direct flip from last year, because I think you get the easier of, yeah, probably. You're getting the easier of the two Arizona schools. In Arizona State, they're rebuilding, adding a lot of talent in the portal. We'll get to go down to Tempe and go up against our old friend Kenny Dillingham. And you play USC instead of UCLA, and USC is better than UCLA. That game will be at Autzen. So I think it's about the same as last year, but when you just look at the slew of games in general, it's pretty darn tough. Got to go at Utah. You got to go at Washington. But the good news about the schedule is there are no super tough games back-to-back. There are no games where Oregon could reasonably be an underdog that are played back-to-back. It starts on September 2nd, day before my birthday, against Portland State at home. Okay. I love that we get a tune-up before Texas Tech, because not having a tune-up before, I just watched The Longest Yard, by the way. Paul Cruz got the same sort of mindset, right? You need a tune-up game. So, great movie. Portland State before Texas Tech makes me feel a little bit more confident. Not that a game against Portland State or Eastern Washington would have allowed us to beat Georgia. It might have prevented 49-3 and had it been, 49-10. So, which would have been statistically better. So, I like that, but it goes Portland State, Texas Tech, and then Hawaii at home. They're a pretty low-caliber Mountain West team. Shouldn't have a problem there. Then conference play begins with Colorado at home. Coach Prime in the house for his first conference game. Great scheduling move by the Pac-12, by the way, to take your most watched team in Oregon, and in the first week that has a full slate of conference games, put Colorado and Coach Prime there. That's a slick little move that will go unnoticed, but not by me, on the Pac-12 office scheduling part. So, well done there. And then we play Stanford on the road, and then we have a bye before going at Washington, which is one of the two, probably, it's at least amongst the three, but it's arguably the toughest game. I feel more concerned about Washington than Utah going into 2023. I don't feel great about either because I think both will again be good. But Utah could be a little bit of a pullback team. Just a little. They're still really good. But playing Washington, I think this is the toughest 3-game stretch that you can look at because we go at Washington after the bye, which is nice, and you play 2 teams that you should be able to beat, right? Like, I think Oregon will have a great chance to be 5-0. They should be no worse than 4-1 going into that game against Washington, and you should be able to beat Colorado at home and Stanford on the road. But then you go at Washington State at home. We know that's never an easy game, lest we forget they arguably should have beaten us this year up in Pullman, but you feel better being at Autzen. And then you go at Utah. But then it's Cal at home next week, and then it's USC at home. And this is what I'm talking about. For the 4 toughest games are in no particular order: Washington, Utah, USC, Oregon State. We play someone who Oregon will be at least a considerable favorite over the week before all of those games. And before Washington, we've got the bye as well, because it was Washington State at home, at Utah, at home against Cal and USC, at Arizona State in week 11, and then week 12 hosting the Beavs in the game formerly known as the Civil War. So I think big picture takeaways there. It's about as good as it could have been. It's far from easy because the Pac-12 is just good. I mean, the Pac-12 is just good. I would rather, if I were having a way to pick and choose, which of course there isn't, but let's just say that I was granted that power for some reason. Gosh, that would be really cool. I would rather play either Washington or Utah at home and go at USC, because playing at the Coliseum is not as daunting as playing in Seattle, where they will sell the place out, and we all know, don't like the Ducks very much, or at Utah, where they will sell the place out anyway and have been darn near impossible to beat in Salt Lake City at Eccles Stadium. So that's one element that I think moves it into the slightly above average category for how difficult it is. But another plus side here, 3 of the final 4 conference games are at home. Cal, USC, then at ASU, which, as we all know, should be okay, but it's the desert. It was nice to see Lanning kind of buck that trend in 2022 in year 1. Be like, what, we're in the desert? I don't even know what's happened here before with Oregon, so let's just go win a football game. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. And then you come back home and host the Beavs. So Washington, Utah, USC, Oregon State, definitely the 4 toughest games that Oregon's got. 2 at home, 2 on the road, and never having to play back-to-back tough games, which ultimately is kind of what did the Ducks in this year. It was, we played Washington, and then we played Utah, and then we played Oregon State, all in a row. This year, there's always, I'm not going to call it a break, because it's not a break, but I am going to call it an easier opponent before you play all of those big games. But just to recap, at Texas Tech is a tough game. No UCLA, no Arizona this year. 4 toughest games. You've got 2 at home, 2 on the road, and you never play 2 of those 4 games back to back. And you got a bye before Washington. So hopefully they'll be fully healthy going into that game. Where does that leave our expectations for the year? I will tell you after I tell you about my friends at LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. LinkedIn Jobs, simply put, helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Couple different mailbag questions here, which you can always ask. I've got a bunch in the rundown. Going to be getting through a number of them this week. I love your questions. They're fantastic. You all rock. Keep them coming. YouTube comments, Twitter at Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. My guy, Animoli Marty McFly, which is easily the slickest name of anyone who's asked a question here on the show. Question for the show. What are your expectations next year, given we just finished with 10 wins? By many preseason estimations, we overachieved this year. I'll address that. Given our excellent recruiting class and the return of Bo, what would you consider success? 10 wins, 11 wins, go Ducks. I want to get to the one thing in there. By many preseason estimations, we overachieved this year. I do not hold that belief. If you go back and listen to the show, I thought the Ducks would go 10-2. I thought they would get to the Pac-12 championship game and probably lose to Utah because you have a first-year head coach and like an 18th-year head coach. They were one disastrous fourth quarter away from doing just that. Though I think Dan Lanning had a solid first season, I would not say that the Ducks overachieved. Now, they showed the potential to overachieve because they were this close in a Bo injury. I mean, literally one play call kind of ended up defining the season, unfortunately. If Oregon has got a running back in the game, hands it off on 3rd and 5, and Bucky Irving scoots his way for a first down, and they win that game against Washington, yeah, they might go 11-1. They might be 11-1 going to the championship game, and things are different. However, that did not take place. We all saw what happened. We don't need to really relive every excruciating detail of how they came up short, but not getting to the conference championship game when each of the last 2 full seasons Oregon had played going into 2022 resulted in a conference championship game appearance, 2019 and 2021. I don't care what happened in 2020. That, to me, was not meeting the standard that I thought was pretty reasonable and had set going into the year. So I don't agree with that particular element. But going into next year, given our excellent recruiting class and the return of Bo, what would you consider a success? Winning more games than they did this year. That is a successful season that I feel really good about. And that does mean returning to the Pac-12 championship game. I'm not here saying that if Lanning goes 9-3, doesn't get there, right? Say it's a 3-0 start, and then you go 6-3 in conference play. End the year 9-3, go to a solid bowl game, go 10-3. Like, if this exact year plays out, but hopefully beating at least one of Oregon State and Washington, if that plays out again, I wouldn't consider it a disappointment or some massive letdown, but to consider the season a success based on the information we have now. Maybe this will change when, I evaluate players as we get into spring football or transfers come in or recruits or all that sort of stuff, because a lot can change between now and September 2nd when we open with Portland State. You got to have at least 10 regular season wins for it to be like an outright success and me to feel really good about it. And you got to get back to the Pac-12 championship game. That's the standard that Oregon has set here. And it was disappointing to not get there this year. And, 10 wins, 11 wins, if you're factoring in postseason play, over 10. Being at 10 or above is a successful season. I cannot ever look at a double-digit win season because in college football, I don't care where you're at, unless it's, Alabama or Georgia now, it is really, really hard to do. Think about LSU. LSU won a national championship. Next full regular season of college football, they went 6-6. This stuff is hard. I don't care what league you're in. I don't care what team you are. It's what makes what Saban and what Kirby Smart is now doing so ridiculously impressive. These guys are succeeding in an incredibly difficult sport. Every sport is hard, but college football, the margin for error is so slim. And every week is so important. And you just don't have that many chances to get it right. Think about like an NBA season, for instance. You got 82 games. Baseball, you got 162. In golf, if you don't play well in this major, there are 3 more and a bunch of other big tournaments. I'm a huge golfer, for those of you who don't know. If you don't perform well in one regular season game in the NBA, win a few more, get it back, and it's like it never happened. If you don't perform well in one regular season game in college football, this is why it's the best sport. It can completely define your season. And you're dealing with kids. You're dealing with kids. But what I want to see from Lanning, as he continues to build the program forward, is continue to progress. So it was a 9-win regular season this year. I'd like to see 10 next year. I would like to see them get to the conference championship game. Doesn't mean they have to win it for it to be a success. That would certainly be a great goal, and I think an attainable one, not an expectation, because the conference is really, really, really good in 2023. But that's what we're looking for here, because the ultimate goal, right? Win a national championship. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. That stuff takes some time to build. And so I think Lanning had a solid, though not incredible, but solid first year. And so I want to see progress continue to go forward here. On a similar note, A. Moody via YouTube asks, Hey Spencer, not sure if you do this kind of thing. I will do anything you want. You want me to get on here and rank the Star Wars movies in order? I'll throw that in the third segment. I'll do anything you want. It's your guys' show. And I am very privileged to be able to host it. So thank you. Not sure if you do this kind of thing, but curious what our expectations should be for next year. I've seen a lot of praise for the Ducks roster, understandably so, as we were put in the top 10 way too early rankings. Not sure where. I think Oregon's been just outside for most of them. Would you measure our success on 10-win season again, or do your expectations rise a bit with year 2 for Lanning and his staff? Hope you had a great holiday season. You can tell that question's been there for a while. Like I said, getting to them as quickly as I can, but the news just keeps coming and this, that, and the other thing, but got a whole offseason. I have never failed to answer a question that has been sent in, so if you send one in and I haven't gotten to it yet, that means just that. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will, I promise. So I think going into next year, if you don't win at least the same number of games, it's an indictment on the offseason you're having or the game management that took place in the fall of 2023. But something else to consider. I'm totally good sitting here and saying, I think this is the range we should be in, right? Like, it should definitely not be fewer than 8 wins, but really it should be 9 and above. That's the standard I think we should set for the program going forward with Lanning and company at the helm, for the caliber of recruits that they are bringing in, for the pedigree from a coaching standpoint that they all have. That's what our expectations should be. But everything in context is always important. You know, I think Lanning had a good, solid year 1. I could come on and say it was a massive disappointment to not get to the Pac-12 championship game. No, it was a mild disappointment for me. Was that the standard I'd set? Yes. But how you failed to reach that goal matters as much as whether or not you do reach it. Because did I feel like Oregon was in striking distance of getting there? Yes. I think they were closer to winning the Pac-12 championship this year than they were a season ago. Because last year's team, 2021 that is, was not as good as 2022. And on that note, Lanning and company deserve a lot of credit. But going forward, when I look at the schedule that we've got here, I think you have 5 games that if you lose, it's not, oh my gosh, the world is falling. How did you lose to that team? You got 5 of those games. At Texas Tech, an 8-win program who played very well at home this year. At Washington, at Utah, USC, and Oregon State, who's a good team. But Oregon State, of the 5, is the one you should most win because that game is at home. And you just can't lose 2 years in a row to the Beavs. That hasn't happened in... When was the last time that happened? I think like 07, 08. 6, 7, 7, 8, somewhere in there. I suspect that game will be a win. But Oregon State is a good team. They're a good program. I think Smith is an excellent coach. So all that being said, that's how I'm setting the standard on the outset right now without knowing context of how games play out or who gets injured or how this goes or how that goes or this blown call or whatever the case may be. Because I look and say, okay, there are 5 games on there that you could lose, and I foresee how you could lose. If you're over 50% in those games, which if you're a good coach, good team, having a good season, that's where you should be, then you're 3-2 in those 5. And if you avoid what would be a major upset by any of the other teams, I don't think Cal's going to be very good. Arizona State is going to need time to rebuild. Colorado has added a lot of talent, but they're still a ways away, and that's at Autzen. I think Stanford could be one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 this year, along with Cal, their Bay Area brother. So when I look at those games and say, you should go at least 3-2. If you go 4-1, you're doing great. That's how I get to a place of, I think in the 9-10 win range is the expectation. And though the schedule is tough and the league is really tough, winning fewer games in the regular season than last year would be unacceptable. Like 9-3 is the baseline expectation for some semblance of a successful season. But it's not going to be easy. Caleb Williams is really good. We know what Michael Penix can do. Utah is unbeatable at home the last couple of seasons. And the Bees, as we know, are not a slouch. And I'm glad we get them and USC at home. I'm glad 3 of the last 4 are at home. But I look at the other games in the conference, Colorado, Stanford, Cal, Arizona State. Washington State can always be tricky, but again, having them at home, feel pretty good there. I also feel like Washington State could be a pullback team in 2023. They lost both their coordinators, and we'll see. But they're not going to be bad. They will not be a train wreck or anything like that. So that's kind of where my expectations are at least 9. But would really like to see them to feel good about what could happen in 2024. Would like to see them win at least 10 regular season games. Obviously, and anything above that, huge success. So I hope I answered you guys' questions there right now. Again, keep them coming. This one, to wrap up today's show about a future pro duck, comes from my guy, Bailey Cordell. Hit me up via the Twitter direct messages, or DMs, as the young kids say. What's up, Spencer? So I got a question for the mailbag. It's draft related. I love draft talk. I love watching pro ducks. I watched the 49ers and Cowboys earlier tonight. The Cowboys. Jerry Jones is going to rinse and repeat and convince everyone, well, we got a team that I feel could win the Super Bowl next year with Dak Prescott at quarterback. Like, yeah, okay, Jerry, keep telling yourself that. Whatever makes you sleep at night. So I am a Ravens fan. This is Bailey talking again. And we have the 22nd overall pick in the draft this year. And I'm praying we take Gonzo at 22 to start beside Marlon Humphrey. Was wondering if you had any thoughts on teams in the NFL that you think Gonzo would be a good fit for, or teams that you want / hope he gets drafted to. This is an interesting question. So I think Gonzo thrives in man-to-man coverage. I think in zone, he's fine, but he is able to maximize his potential in a man-to-man heavy scheme. So I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, which upsets some of you, and you're just going to have to live with that because I'm a Northwest kid. So I'm a Seahawks fan. We play a lot of zone. He's not a fit. He's not as great of a fit because Seattle doesn't run a lot of man-to-man. They're very zone heavy. Now, my understanding, even though Wink Martindale isn't there anymore, because you have Marlon Humphrey on the other side, that's a very man-heavy defense historically over the years. I didn't watch a ton of the Ravens this year because they were boring as could be. I mean, their most exciting element was whether or not Lamar Jackson would get paid, and I can't stand drama. It just goes against everything. I don't do drama. It bothers me. Anyway, so I think he could be a really nice fit there because he thrived in man-to-man coverage this year. He was really, really good. I think his ball skills need a little bit of work, but they're grading him as a first-round corner. That's what I saw this year. I saw that potential before the season began, and as it went on, I saw a lot of moments where I went, man, that's an NFL corner right there. I think the Ravens would be a great fit. Now, let me look at the draft order real quick, just to make sure that I don't miss a team that he could potentially go to. He'll fall out of the top 10. He won't be a top 10 pick, but he should be a first round pick. So as you go down, boy, the Eagles at 10, that's enticing. I think the Eagles at 10 is really, really enticing. I think the Patriots at 14 could be a really good fit because, again, that's a very man-to-man heavy defense. I would not want to see him go to the Packers. I think they're kind of a mess. The Commanders, they stink. They need something else. Here's the other one. You know what? You know what I'm actually in for? And though I'm totally fine if he goes to the Ravens because I think that's a fit, I would love to see him play for the Lions. The Lions need defensive help. So do the Chargers. Okay, don't get me started on the Chargers. I got myself started there. So, Spencer, don't get yourself started on the Chargers. The Lions, I think, are an ascending team. They need a lot of defensive help. I think he could be a great fit there. That would be a fun Pro Ducks team to watch, man. Penei Sewell on one side, who's a beast. That guy is a beastly beast. He is otherworldly good. And I would love to see Gonzo on the other side. But I think the Ravens would be a good fit too. So number 1, I would like to see him go to the Lions. Number 2, Eagles would be fun because they feel like they're in a really good spot. And number 3, I'll give you the Ravens there. I think that's a perfect fit. Keep the questions coming. I love answering them here on the show. You know how to get in touch with me, or at least you should by now, YouTube or on Twitter. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.